So we are so excited with this venue for the fifth summit, and hang on to your seats, folks. And these consultants that are presenting are literally world class. You'll find that out by the end of the session. It is really profound. With that, Paul Hindelang provides inspiration and profit improvement for clients in his workshops, consulting, coaching, and speaking. Paul teaches business owners and individuals how to improve their attitudes, their productivity, and really get results, expanding their client relationships, referrals, and resales, and increase the real valuation of their business or personal estate. And Paul has really done just a profound job with this for decades. He has provided timely assistance to clients in business, sales growth, sales and service improvement, staff motivation, productivity techniques. His systems and guaranteed results provide a risk-free approach to quickly achieve specific, focused objectives. Paul is an engineer by trade with advanced work in human resources, philosophy, theology, and most importantly, entrepreneurial business experiences. Teaching personal growth and personal leadership for results is his hallmark. He is broadly certified and licensed in quality improvement, logistics, leadership, training, commercial real estate, financial services. Extraordinary opportunities exist for every person and every business. Paul finds the untapped treasure and helps the clients mine it. And so I also want to acknowledge Paul for his leadership within CBRT, the Business Roundtable. Paul is currently a member of the board of directors for CBRT, where he has made just phenomenal impact. He has been chairman of the Birmingham Roundtable in Detroit, and that has grown phenomenally. And Paul provides leadership to Eastern Michigan, where just recently, in January, we started a new roundtable in Rochester that is just taken off the charts. And Paul is starting one in Plymouth here a little bit later this spring, early summer, and we're seeing nothing but growth. And Paul, we just appreciate your leadership, passion, and motivation so much. And so now, without further ado, Paul Hindelang and the topic, raising the bar on your leadership performance. Paul?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I appreciate the fine introduction. It's a joy to be with all of you in Grand Rapids. I bring you cheer from Detroit. We're on the rebuild in Detroit, as you can read in the papers, and we're pretty excited about all the good things there. Those of us in CBRT are excited about what we're doing with CBRT in Detroit. As Jeffrey said, we have successfully kicked off the Rochester chapter, and I would hope by the end of the year we will have 2 more chapters. We're trying to compete with the combination of Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Holland, and I added all those up and figured out if we get 6 in the metropolitan area, then we can be in fine stead with you all. So I appreciate you're all being here this morning, and I know you're going to enjoy the modules. I want to emphasize that after I get finished with my comments on the opening here, the 4 modules that are coming up are going to be very instructive, and I'll try to point out some of those things as we go along. First of all, who's Paul Hindelang? Just a little personal background. I was born and raised in the Detroit area, raised in an early Catholic school environment. I still appreciate very much going to see the kids at Mass in the various parishes, in the early grade schools, and I attribute a lot of my personal formation to those days. When you start at 6 years old and you're blessed with strong leadership, which I received from the Dominican nuns, and a very good family, it makes a difference in your life. And it's made a tremendous difference in my life. And I think CBRT does that for an awful lot of people. Not everybody is as lucky as I was to be formed from the early on. But grew up, did the normal things, was told at 12 years old, you know, you have to get a paper route here and you have to start providing for yourself. There's no more allowances after 12 years old. So I became an entrepreneur early, and that's paid great dividends in my lifetime. Moved on to engineering school and came out into sales engineering in the late 60s, the era of the IBM salesman, the three-piece white shirt suit, and that's been the culture I've followed regardless of casual day. It's what I've done in all of my businesses, and I still do today, and I think it's been a wonderful, wonderful model. I get an email from one of my friends, we're having our 50th college reunion, and the comment was, do I have to wear a tie? Is anybody going to? I said, well, you know, at the banquet, most everybody there will be with a sport coat and tie. He sends me another email back, oh, gee, he's from Southern California. I don't even know if I have any ties. So I responded back to him, well, last year, the captain of our football team was there, and I don't remember if he wore a tie or not. And the captain of our basketball team was there, and I think he did wear a tie, but I'm not sure. And of course, I wore a tie because I haven't taken it off since 1969. And it's just part of culture. And leadership is really culture, and I'm going to comment on that in a few minutes. But once you establish it and you build habits, those habits stay with you personally, they stay with your company for the rest of your days. CBRT is a habit, and it's a habit-forming leadership development program that can help you for the rest of your life. It's terrific. First of all, when we talk about performance, and the committee laid out the idea, we're going to talk about raising the bar on performance. My first reflection was, what does that really mean? And it reminded me of a story I heard, and you've probably all experienced this as a kid for sure, and maybe even today. You're sitting in the TV room, and then all of a sudden you're getting hungry, and you go into the kitchen and you open up the refrigerator, and you stare into the refrigerator. And I remember as a kid, we would do that. My father would call in from the other room, what are you looking for? And we didn't know. We just knew that we had a feeling that we wanted something and it had to be in the refrigerator. Close that door and get back in. So the question I ask you this morning is, what are you looking for? What performance bar are you trying to raise? I see a gospel or reference here in John 1:38, and you can go research it later. But it's basically when the apostles were being gathered by Jesus, they said, oh, here comes the Son of God. Here comes the Messiah. And he turned around and looked at them and said, what are you looking for? And that's the question you have to answer. And I want to try to help you answer some of that this morning. If you don't know what you're looking for in performance, you're never going to find it. If you have to write down for your own personal self and for your business those performance measures that you're going to guide your life and your business by, you do have a chance then of reaching those performance bars. The limits to achievement that most people face fall in three categories. First of all, the worst one is it's self-imposed. I just don't think I can. I don't believe in myself. You may have read recently or heard recently Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile decided to take that self-imposed limitation on and went out and ran one day with his college friends and broke the barrier that everybody said couldn't be broken, running a mile in 4 minutes. And he did it in 3:59. It's been broken many times since. The truth is, don't impose limitations on yourself that are unrealistic. Second of all, we all face real obstacles. There won't be a soul of us that get through life without having some pretty serious challenges, and maybe to the point of total defeat. I work in the internet marketing field, amongst other things, and I'm in contact with people all over the world that are being born again. Their phoenix is rising again. And I hear stories of businesses across the world that have collapsed and then rebuilt again. The real point is you're going to face obstacles, and if you're not willing to stiffen up your back and get back in the game, then of course that will limit your achievement. Third, opinion versus truth. This one frustrates me more than anything. As a business consultant, I have very often gone into businesses and observed what's going on in manufacturing or in their offices or the sorts, and there will be 2 or 3 people doing something, and I'll look, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? And then I'll say to the owner, that can be replaced with a computer. Those 3 jobs, it's overhead. Let's get those out and put a computer in to do that. Well, you can't do that. Let's get the people. We have a little committee meeting, and they can give me hours of reasons why it cannot be done. And frankly, that's their opinion. It's not the truth, because I can go right down the street to their competition that I may have already done a consulting project on that has already replaced those 3 people with a machine. Now, whether you like being replaced with a machine or not is not the issue. Human beings are going to be needed in the workplace forever and ever. Robots are not going to take over everything. They are certainly going to supplement what happens, and they're going to make your business run more profitable. So you better wake up to the fact the truth is the truth is the truth. And if we spend a little more time talking about truthful things and a little less time listening to people's opinions, I think we'll break through and raise the bar of performance. The question is, what is the goal? What goals are you looking for? What is your real life purpose? Now here's a challenging one. You've probably heard goal setting or motivational speakers say, write them down. Spiritual, mental, physical, social, financial. Write down your goals and they will be achieved. And that's true. Until you write them down, you're likely to lose track of them because you're distracted. And we're going to address that subject in one of the modules coming up. But once you've figured out what your purpose is, your real purpose is deeper inside than you know. It's not on a list of goals. It's not a bucket list. Your real purpose is what God put you on earth to do. And you have to dig a little deeper than just writing a goals list down. But that's a start. Write the goals list and you'll be motivated to dig a little deeper because you begin to see the reasons why you want to do something. You see, life is not really a seeking exercise, seeking goals and higher achievement. Life is more like a mining exercise. It's an examining. It's going deeper inside and finding out what is your real purpose. What really matters most to you? What do you really want out of your life? Now, I happen to be on the shorter side. I have fewer ahead of me than I have behind me. But I, every day, try to examine what really matters most. What do I really need to be working on priorities? Because I learned something from Norman Vincent Peale years ago in his books, and it's called Live in Day-Tight Compartments. You have 24 hours. And if you looked at your life in a 24-hour cycle, you can accomplish extraordinary things 24 hours at a time. But that 24-hour deadline, when you put your head down at night, means you get to start over the next day should you wake. And now you can figure out what matters most today. You find your gifts inside of you. And once you found your gifts inside, you can share them with others. Because you know, if you know you have a gift, it's easy to give it away. But if you doubt yourself and you don't know what your real gift is, what's mined inside you, you're always trying to hold on to it because you're trying to discover what gift and talent you have. So your purpose in life is really to mine yourself and mine the God-given potential that is in each one of us. Now that requires a little bit of change, and people say, well, I think I've got to change my address, or I'm changing my job, or sadly enough, I've got to change my spouse. I'm going to make a change so things will be better. Change does not mean better. Change means change. Progress, improvement, they speak of it in the quality management world as continuous improvement. Little changes, little adaptations that make you better and better on a day-to-day basis because it makes you truer to who you really are, closer to your God-given potential, closer to what you've been put on earth for. It's very difficult to mine that. It takes thinking, and thinking is in short supply today. Activity is what everybody seems driven by, or a cell phone, or a video, or external motivation. Thinking is hard work. See, the truth is, no matter what the sports people tell you, or everybody or everyone trying to motivate us to become all we can be, they say you can do anything. Well, that's just not true. You cannot do anything. You're here for a reason. What is the reason? Seeking inside, doing a little thinking. God has a dream for you and a plan for you. And if you're having a difficult time in business, it's likely you're not on course. If you're having a difficult time motivating other people, it's likely you're not on course. If you're having a difficult time in your family life or your social life, it's likely you're not on course. Well, what do? Do some examination, some self-assessment to determine what is the course of action. And then if you think you have an inkling, you're probably right. You're probably moving towards the right course. And then you step forward one step at a time, one little change at a time, and all of a sudden, a whole new world of opportunity opens up to you. That's the power of finding out what you should do. So how do you set the bar? I like to look at setting the bar in 4 areas, 4 distinct areas to think about. Number 1, your financial security. People have said, I could be rich or I could be poor, but it's a lot better being rich. Rich in some people's minds is billions. Rich in other people's minds is having a meal, and a steady meal week after week after week. So it isn't a matter of the magnitude, but there is a level of financial security that one must have in their life because it's awful difficult to think when you're starving or when you're suffering or your business is bleeding to death. You can't do deep thinking when you're broke. You have to get the next meal. So financial is a very important performance bar that you have to measure. Second one is people. What is your relationship with all people? People in your businesses, people in your social, personal lives. And what do you measure as a successful communication? The feedback you give them, the feedback you receive from them will give you a pretty good calibration of how harmonious your relationships are. If you have conflicted relationships, get them fixed. It's part of raising the bar. And then your customers. Customers are anybody that you serve. They could be in your business place. They could be your son or daughter. They could be your spouse. It could be your next door neighbor. People that you serve in your life that are expecting something from you. You owe them the very best, the highest level of your performance. And then your suppliers. Who's helping you? Who's on your team? Who's providing supply to your company? Who's supplying nourishment to your business? Who's supplying nourishment to your social life? To your spiritual life? Those are your suppliers. Could be your pastor. Okay? Could be the milkman. could be your best friend on the golf course. These are your suppliers, people that are providing you. 4 levels of measuring performance. And how do you do it? Well, first of all, you have to think deeply about each one of them. Write them down. Write down who they are. Recognize them for what they are and what value they're bringing. Review what you're doing with them, and then repeat the process over and over and over again until your performance moves up. Financial, simple things. And these have been written down, and probably every person in this room heard them when they were a child or in other training. Number 1, create a budget. But don't create a budget for next month or next year. Create a budget for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however many years you think you're going to be on earth. If you're 30 years old, you better have a budget that'll take you to 80. Lay it out. You might get a look at 30 to figure out how much money you really need to have at 80. It will shock you. I do some financial planning work, as Jeffrey mentioned, and everybody is surprised. The richest and poorest amongst us, because they've never done a budget. Second of all, save 10%. Everything that comes in your pocket, take 1 dime out of $1 and put it in another pocket and lock it down and never look at it again. Because you will need that resource at some point in time. There will come a time that that resource will save you in your journey. Third, give when it hurts. No matter how broke you are, donate to your charity. Donate to your church. Donate to noble causes that make the world a better place. It's a simple concept called tithing. It's a simple concept called pay it forward. I'm telling you, the rewards that you get from paying it forward are always 10 times more than whatever you paid forward. If you can afford a dime, you'll get $1. If you can afford $100, you'll get 10,000. It's just the simple way it works. It's a formula that's worked for a long period of time, and if you walk away today with nothing else, and you take and multiply what's in you 10 times, you're going to be further ahead. The next one is develop your people. Michelle's going to talk to us about developing people in one of the modules coming forward, but I like to look at it as find your 30 people. I have a master list of people that I have attempted to influence, guide, and make better than myself in my life. And those 30 people, some have passed away by now, but all the ones that are still alive, I mentally and physically try to do something to help them improve themselves. Because if I can help 30 other people get what they want, Zig Ziglar told me, I can get anything I want. Pay it forward. Give it to other people. Develop your 30 people. Nurture their success and be a gift to them. I tell people at the chapter meetings over in Detroit when we have CBRT, every time I prepare my notes to go and chair one of those meetings, I think to myself, gee, I hope all these people come that are signed up. I hope more people come. And I tell them, do you realize what a gift you are to each other? The mere fact that you will take time out of your morning to come and sit at the table with the rest of us, you're bringing a gift to that table. And the other 8 people at the table or 10 people are enjoying that gift. Because there's never been a meeting where some or many people walk out, boy, I learned a lot. There's something I learned new. And I'm going to share you a story that I heard just this week about a person of tremendous leadership. You may even recognize the name, right? But I would have never known the story had I not been at the CBRT meeting this week. So be a gift in every one of your ventures, whether it's your business or the CBRT or your church. When you go, you're presenting yourself as a gift to the other people who are there. When you fail to attend any of those events, you're keeping your gift under a basket, and it's not helping the rest. The next is remove the friction in your pursuit of performance improvement. And that's simply have a strategy. Some of the ideas that I'm laying out here for you today to consider are part of your strategy. Take the ones that apply to you and say, I'm going to put that strategy to play. And then do it fast. We're in a world of ultimate speed. You go on the internet today before 5 o'clock and Amazon delivers it tomorrow. And that's the competition. That's the standard on everything you're doing. If you can't do it on your cell phone and you can't get it delivered tomorrow, you're behind the 8 ball. You're falling behind. And whether you like it or not, that's the truth. And I sit in many meetings. In fact, I was in a meeting with some executives the other day, and one of the executives says, I'm so sick and tired of it, I'm getting a flip phone. And I thought to myself, thank the good Lord I don't work in that company. Because denial is not a good course of action. You cannot hide. You must stay engaged in the game if you expect to lead other people. So it's important to introduce speed into your life. Speed accurately. Don't do speed chaotically, but speed. Third is systems. The only way that you're going to, we were talking as we drove over here this morning and remarking about the bridge that fell down in Florida. And it's a tragedy. I'm an engineer. And I made comment to Rob Dumont. I said, boy, the engineers and construction people, they're going to really have a lot to answer for here in the next few weeks. It's not a good situation. But then I said, how many wonderful things occur in our business, our world, that are perfectly functional? We never think. How many times do airplanes lift off and land? How about the car itself? There's 7,500 pieces that go into a vehicle that are made all over the world. And that vehicle drives smoothly at 90 miles an hour from Detroit to Grand Rapids. Right? And all I had to do is go in the garage this morning and start it up, and it jumped right up and brought us here peacefully without asking a question. So there's a lot of wonderful things, but there are some bridges that fall down. So make sure your systems are in place. Get digital. Make a decision, yes or no. We don't have time in today's world to deliberate and deliberate and deliberate. And what you will find if you will examine the deliberation, it's a form of delay. It's a form of negotiation. And it's not helpful. What is helpful is making decisions. Avoid distraction and chaos in your life. Bill's going to talk about chaos, distraction, and what it's doing to all of us. And this is kind of where I started coming up with the idea of thinking. Why don't we spend more time thinking about what's inside me than what's on my outside? If I close off some of this noise, maybe I can find a better center and a better purpose. There's a book that was written some time ago, We Lead from the Inside, not the outside. Some comments from that book. It's written by James Cowes and Barry Posner, motivational and their leadership development people. Authentic leadership does not come from the outside in. It comes from the inside out. You become the author of your own story, and then you make history. And that's very true. Clarity of personal values matters greatly. It helps you feel motivated, creative, committed to your workplace. When we're clear about our own personal values, we feel empowered and prepared to lead. When you're not clear about your personal values, it's hard to imagine how you can possibly stand up for your beliefs. It's about leading out of what's already in your soul. And it took me quite a few years to figure that out. I was joking with Rob and Stu on the way over here that my fraternity brothers and my friends over the years, and I blamed it, well, I'm an engineer, that they didn't understand me. And they laugh at me and they say, no, Paul, we never understood you. Well, that's okay to be not understood. if you're leading from your soul. See, you're thinking about something, doing something, and being something that people will ultimately aspire to if it's on the right course. And that's one of the great blessings of CBRT, to remind you on a monthly basis, are you on the right course? Focus only on your strengths. I taught a time management class years ago, and one of the exercises that we went through was to make people list everything they did on a day-to-day basis. And then my goal as the instructor leader was to get them to let go of 8 out of 10 items, and if I was great, 9 out of 10 items, and keep only 1 out of 10 for themselves. Delegate or eliminate the other 9. Because reality is, if you look at your list today, all the 10 things that you're supposed to do or whatever, you're probably not very good at 9 of them. But you're doing them anyway. What you need to do is figure out how to get somebody else to do the other 9. And you spend all of your time doing the one you're good at. Because you'll multiply that one good thing into 10x power. And when you do that, you will have more activity, more people following, more inspiration, because they know you're staying in your lane. You're doing what you are absolutely masterful at. They know it, and they want you to do it on their behalf, because they are not Michael Jordan, and they know it. But they're sure happy to be on the team. And as a leader, that could be the most important thing that you do, is get rid of the things that are not your strengths and make your cannot do it list. More strength, more results. And then understand your story. I have some stories to share with you, and you may have heard some of these people pass away. Story I picked up at our CBRT meeting this last week was about Mike Feasy. Does that name ring a bell? He was Feasy, formerly the president of Huntington National Bank here in the Michigan area. But prior to that, he was the general manager of WJR Radio, executive for many years. And one of the gentlemen at our meeting worked for Mike Feasy, and he was a young man, and he was very enthusiastic, and he's in the mortgage business or financing for small businesses and all that. And he mentions Feasy name, so I took the opportunity to interrogate a little further at our CBRT meeting, and I said, you know, I've heard that name, and you hear it a lot as a highly respected. He was the greatest. He was the greatest man ever. I said, well, what's the story? All right? And he said, well, he was general manager and had a heart attack at WJR. Oh, and they were sad to lose him, but he came back from his heart attack. He said, I'm on the wrong track. And he left WJR and retired. He heard it all over the radio that Mike Feasy was retired. Sad. Well, then, 6 months later, Mike Feasy re-emerges like a phoenix. He's the president of Huntington National Bank. Well, the deal was Huntington National Bank recruited him, and they said, you don't have to work, you don't have to do anything. You just kind of be our brand, be our image, because you're the most wonderful, highly respected man ever in southeastern Michigan. So he went in, and he said, this young man worked for him. And he said, what did he do? He said, young man, here's my story, whatever, I'm working here. He says, but before we get into your work life, he says, I learned a lot through the heart attack or whatever. And he said, the most important thing is for us to pray together first. He said, I was shocked. I never heard of such a thing in the workplace. He said, really, Mr. Feasy, can we do that or whatever? He says, yeah. All right. And he said that was the kind of open culture, respect that he had, and everybody loved him in that. And then he lasted 7 years there, and he passed away on another heart attack, all right? Unfortunately. But that's the story of Mike Feasy, the impact that he made. Now we have others. There's a friend of mine, his name is Jack Crusilla. He also does a radio program on WJR. And Jack owns a company called Trust in Us, which is a recruiting firm in Detroit. But prior to that, Jack is very, very successful and was early in the days of the, I'll call him the temporary help engineering services business. And he sold that company 10, 15 years ago for lots of money. And so money's not his object. He's just a developer of people and a wonderful, wonderful man. And he sends out a newsletter, and every time one of these luminaries passes away, he sends out kind of an update. And so we have, you've heard of Art Van Furniture, right? Art Van passed away. So Jack sends out his notes. And I want to share this story. Art Van began working at 11 years old, delivering newspapers, sold clothes as a teenager, and then furniture at 20. In 1959, he opened his own furniture store named Art Van in East Detroit. It consists now of 182 stores, 9 states, 3,800 teammates. That's leadership. In knowing how to make money, Mr. Van was known for giving it away. In 1990, he saved the Thanksgiving Day Parade, donating $225,000 and millions since then. He donated over $21 million to St. John Providence Health. In December 2017, he gave $20 million to expand the Brothers Solanus Casey Center, Franciscan Center in Detroit. His legacy lives on through 7 daughters, 3 sons, 32 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Jack does one other thing. All these luminaries, he at one time or another has met them or been with them, and he asked them to write out their philosophy of life. And he keeps them. And I've been to his Jack's home, and he has a book of some very, very, very famous people with philosophy of life, names you would recognize, from sports heroes to politicians. All right? And Art Van said, my philosophy in life is to believe in a higher power. To believe that you can accomplish almost anything with God and very little without him. To treat all people with respect and you get respect in return. To do your very best every day and always look at the glass as being half full. That's Art Van. That's a legacy that we've been gifted today. From Jack, through me, to you. There was another one that you've heard of recently, Bill Pulte. Heard of Pulte Homes? The Bill Pulte story. He began selling greeting cards, fresh cherries in the Saturday Evening Post, door to door, at age 8. His first home was built at age 18. He gave his second home he ever built to his mom and dad. He raised 14 children. His company built 650,000 homes, one of the largest builders in America, 50 major markets. He received the National Quality Award from Malcolm Baldrige. He believed that every one of his employees' priorities should be God, family, and then the company. He believed that you lead people and you manage things. He believed that if it's not broke, don't fix it, is very bad advice. In 2005, Forbes named him the 486th richest person in the world. Bill Pulte. Bill Pulte's philosophy of life. The measure of a man. Oh, I have to get my glasses. It's a one-liner. My philosophy of life. The measure of one's true success is their internal peace. Finding it within you. So, what these men have done is they've transferred belief, their enthusiasm, and their commitment to other people in a very big way, and have left a legacy, both financial and family. 12 children and 14 children, and both multi-millionaire billionaires, and gave most of it away. So it's that transference that is our real responsibility. As that little visual says, the same old thinking ain't working anymore, folks. You can't follow the same old thinking. You're going to get the same old results. We have to have refreshed leadership. What practices have been found to be most effective? And I synthesized through a bunch of them. Here's what all the experts say. There's really three things. You have open and continuous communication with your people. Share your faith, share your purpose, share your beliefs, and let people take it or leave it. Again, another comment Rob and I were talking about on the way over here is when you have an idea or you present it, at least half the people aren't going to buy into it. And then we laughed and said, maybe likely more like 90% won't. So this is not a popularity contest, leadership. All right? It's understanding who you are, what your purpose is, and what the right thing to do is, stepping forth and doing it. Second of all, always about us, never about you or me. It's always about us. Be fearless in setting standards and enforcing discipline. I'll go back to what I said at the opening. The Catholic school nuns, the Dominican nuns, were very disciplined, and they treated us in a very disciplined way. Very fair, very charitable, but right was right and wrong was wrong, and you knew it in 30 seconds. And you were held accountable. If we instill that back into the world more today, you're going to get the kind of performance you want. Set the standards and enforce the discipline. That's all that's necessary. So raising the bar in leadership is really to model the person that you want to become and lead with that style. At one of our CBRT meetings last week, it was pointed out by one of the participants, Jesus, as the servant leader, is really the model that we should all consider as the best model. So raise the bar, model that person, lead with that style, and people will follow you because they want to be just like Mike. They really want to be Michael Jordans. They just don't have the talent or the resource or have been developed as well as Michael Jordan. But they will follow you to attempt to do it. And then if they're one of your 30, you can directly influence it. Your responsibility is to lead with truth, with love, and with accountability. And I like those three. And if we just wrote those on the back of our hand. Am I dealing with this individual in truthfulness, in transparency? Am I dealing with them in a loving manner? And am I holding them accountable? And am I holding myself accountable? And if you do those TLAs, I think you can have great success in leadership. I want to close with another piece of artwork, and I have one for each of you. This is from a friend of mine in Birmingham. His name is Robert Dempster, and he's a creative artist. He's about my age. He's one of the most fun guys, musicians around. And he did this piece of artwork that I saw and picked up. And it's a lesson for us that is very easily summarized in heart in hand. Heart in hand. We have to remember in our leadership experience that everybody we're dealing with is both human and divine. There's the material, practical, execution part of their life that we need to tap and get them to do what we want them to do. Develop the communication, sense the purpose, achieve the objectives. But there's also another part of them, that's their soul. And that's their divine connection. And that's where the power is. And you ignite that power and that spirit and touch the divine, and they will self-motivate, and they will self-direct, and they will become just like Mike and reach their untapped potential because they'll be inspired because you touch not only their hand, but also their heart. So I brought one for each of you to remember to touch the hand in the heart. Thank you very much.
Again, welcome to the 5th Annual Summit for CBRT, the Business Roundtable. We are going to be in rapid succession here this morning. We'll let each one of our presenters give their own dossier, tell you what they want about themselves for expediency here this morning. We're going to run through really quick because it's going to be a rapid succession, one right after the other, okay? Rapid fire. And starting with Michelle May, Developing Future Leaders. Right behind her is Bill Beck, Mistakes of Leadership in a Hyperactive World. And right after Bill is Bob Hughes, Clarifying Your Message Through Story. And then finally, again, Paul Hindelang to wrap it up with Securing Talent to Grow Your Future Today. So without further ado, let us begin.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So this morning, I'm going to ask for the podium mic, which, note to self, I think I need a podium on top of the podium for my height. I'll try not to pace around so much. I'm a pacer, so I'll have to remember not to do that. I always find it hard to say, to talk about myself. We're a young startup. Every time I talk about what we do, I use the word we a lot. And as you're a young startup, you start by yourself, and then you're adding other people to the team. People always say, who is we? I'm like, I don't know. I just felt like every time I do something, it's never I. I know Paul talked about that earlier. Because even along the way, if I was the only one to complete the task by myself, other people have come along, helped me, coach me, develop me. So for me, it's always we, right? So we are Momentum Development Group. And I'll share with you a little bit of a background. I spent about 10 plus year in actually talent selection area, research-based talent selection, where we really promote that when you're hiring and recruiting top talent, do so with confidence and not with hope, right? Sometimes we hire people and say, I hope it's gonna work out. No, select with confidence. So I have an opportunity to learn from some of the greatest minds in the field who develop selection instrument, researcher who led research that develop interview instrument for companies such as Stryker, Caterpillar, all around the world. And I learned a lot. And my passion is actually really developing people, because sometimes you can recruit the biggest talent in the world, and I watch them crash and burn. I talked about that in the last year's event. Well, why is that? Because everyone needs coaching and development. Talent in itself is raw materials, right? So how is a company going to support them and develop them and groom them and, to success? So that's where my passion for leadership development comes in. So in many years at working with leadership, I'm looking for people who are looking for answer. How do I develop myself? How do I develop my leader? That's why leadership development is a $14 billion industry, because everyone could write a book and call it leadership development effort, okay? So what are the answers? So I will be addressing some of that today through our research process. So I have a lot of those findings to share with you. But I want to begin today to thank Jeffrey and CBRT for giving me the opportunity to return for this year's event. So thank you so much. Last year when I was here, I spoke on the topic of self-leadership. Now, throughout that process, it turned out that God had a few things to teach me about my leadership in that preparation process. Isn't it funny how He works sometimes? But that process also was very instrumental and inspired our team to write this leadership training called Self-Leadership, which is leading yourself well so that you can lead others well. So thank you for that. And I will admit to you now that my confidence was shaken the night before last year's event, where I became fearful that how my message was going to resonate with the audience. That was when God told me that the meaning is not in the number of people who will praise your message, but that I have specifically someone in the audience that needed to hear what I have to say to them through you. So will you be a willing servant?
That's good.
So there was a leader from last year's event connected with me afterward, and then we met again a couple months after that, and she shared with me that that event set off a series of events and decision-making that changed the course of her career, professional career, and her ministry of work. This is perhaps the most important thing I have learned in my walk with God. We are extremely insignificant, and we are extremely significant. We're insignificant because at the end of the day, it's God's handiwork and His masterpiece. He'll get it done. It's never us. But we're significant because He needs us and He wants us so that He can accomplish His handiwork through us. But you know what? If we're not willing, He'll get it done. Another way, He'll use someone else. He'll use another willing servant. His glory will always be declared. So that's what I learned. So it's always a choice. So I see leadership is the same way. Leading others is a choice first and foremost. Start with commitment in your mind and commitment of your heart. And I share with you an author of a book, James Hunter. He is the author of The Servant. If you guys have never read this book before, I highly recommend it. I actually had great pleasure. This is how I learned about this book. I met Jim, he go by Jim, and his family on vacation at a bonfire up north in Michigan. He's actually here as a Michigander. The book is called This Servant. It's a fable. It's a very easy read. It completely changed the course of my mission in my career. So this is what Jim has to say. The road to authority and leadership begins with the will. The will is the choices we make to align our actions with our intentions. In the end, we all have to make the choices about our behavior and accept the responsibility for our choices. Will we choose to be patient or impatient, kind or unkind, actively listen or merely be silent, waiting for our opportunity to speak, humble or arrogant, respectful or rude, selfless or selfish, forgiving or resentful, honest or dishonest, committed or just involved. Leadership starts with the choice and commitment in our heart and our mind to lead. When our leaders step up and choose to lead, however, it is our responsibility as a company to support the growth and development as a leader. So how are we going to do that? Well, today, I'm going to start off with a quote, actually by a country's top organizational development leader. She was quoted by saying, in the agriculture era, schools mirrored a garden. In the industrial era, classes mirrored the factory with an assembly line of workers or learners. How will learning look in the digital era? This was by Lucy Dinwiddie, the Global Learning and Executive Development Leader of General Electric. In today's world, especially due to technology and innovation, the pace of business is moving fast. To keep up with the pace of business and the ambition to grow, leaders are called upon to lead. Our challenge is not only understanding what excellent leadership should look like, but the challenge is how do we get the training and development initiative to them in a consistent and continuous manner, especially when we're facing a growing global economy where your leaders are working leaders and may not be in the same place at the same time. Do these pains sound familiar to you yet? Mm-hmm. This is what keeping all the leadership development professionals up at night. Leadership development is not an event. Just like a plant, you don't water them once and then you walk away expecting to thrive and bloom and grow fruit, okay? But an important continuous initiative. So to support it, we need a sustainable program not only to deploy it, but to maintain it for success. No doubt, companies are recognizing the importance of developing future leaders. So in our product development process, we have talked with numerous organizations and leaders within the organization who are overseeing this important initiatives. In some cases, they are the CEO and CFO directly. In some cases, they are HR business partner, HR manager, directors, training manager. These people are rating this initiative of developing leaders as important. Some say is imperative, and even life or death for the survival of your organization. So if this is so important, how well are we doing with this important initiative? Well, let's take a look at two reputable research institutes and their research findings into this matter. According to Deloitte University Press study in 2016, 89% of executives rated the need to strengthen, re-engineer, improve organizational leadership as an important priority. But yet only 37% of those companies believe their programs are effective. Furthermore, a study from Corporate Executive Board Research shows that 66% of the companies invest in programs that aim to identify high potential employees to help them advance. But only 24% of the senior executives at those firms consider the programs to be successful. And what is not showing up there is that only a mere 13% have confidence in the rising leaders in their organization. This is why this topic consistently the most top-rated topic through all the CBRT event that leaders are telling us what's keeping them up at night. So these statistics are not correlating to the level of importance we're placing on these initiatives for the livelihood of our organization. So what is standing in our way? So we're really motivated to figure this out. So in our process, we do this thing called product validation survey process, where we target a customer archetype and talk with them and validate their pains. So what's surprising to us is cost is not what's standing in our way, okay? So when we ask how much they're willing to budget for each leader every year and for their development, we get the answer for as low as $2,500 per person every year to as high as $16,000 per leader every year. Now, these numbers correlate with the level of importance. The result is not, but willing to invest is. So if cost is not the issue, and we view this as imperative to address what is really standing in our way. Because most organizations we talk to felt they haven't reached a point yet where they have a comprehensive program they feel confident in with robust learning and development. So here are the top themes that emerge as top challenges when we talk to our customer archetype. Number one, most frequent, everybody has said this, was time. So what do we mean by time? They described it in two different ways. First, training and development is often valued, but all has expressed the stress of taking their leaders out of the operation for a 4-hour or 8-hour at a time for a training. Now, not to mention if they're working leader, when they're sitting in a room for 4 to 8 hours, guess what? What are they worrying about in their head? What were you worrying about in your head? Right? So how engaged then is that learning experience? Okay, time is also described in this way. It's for those people who are tasked with building and sustaining a leadership development program. Well, I can tell you that my fellow HR professional could tell you that they're stretched thin. Their department is extremely thin. A lot of people think about HR sometimes as payroll, benefit, employee relation. The function HR, when you do it to the highest level, is actually quite complex and very transformational for an organization. But we are thin. We're a small army. So when we're tasked with developing this program, it takes both time to develop a training and development material, and also take time, if we choose not to develop those in-house, it takes time to interview, vet out vendors to partner with. And quality relationship and partnership take extreme high level time to implement and integrate. And most of the time, it takes so long because the outside vendor is so invasive to our process and our culture when we try to do that, okay? So the second challenge is actually determining what is leadership? What does a great leadership look like? A lot of people have different opinion. What is a great leader? Is it accountable? Is it caring? Is it honest and integrity? It's actually all of those things. But how do we teach it systematically, foundational, first, second, and third? Because we lost sight of learning, effective learning in adult training. Think about how systematic it is in K through 12. Yeah. What does adult training look like? Yeah. PowerPoint, 8 hours, sitting there, some activity and discussion, right? Yeah. There are actually professionals who study adult learning. My friend Blaine here in the audience, that's what a master's degree is in. We don't utilize these professionals enough in corporate training. Adults learn differently. I had the opportunity to work with a PhD, he's a psychometrician. If you're wondering what that is, I just learned that a few years ago. Is a PhD of putting statistics, quantifying human behaviors. That's the person that we study under. He will always take a chance to teach us, when you train like that, do this, do that, think about this, think about that. He was trying to tell us the adult learn differently. Yeah, that's right. If you don't believe that, think about all the training experience you had. How much did you retain it? How much did you apply it? Okay? So let me go back to the second challenge, is what is an excellent leader look like? So let's talk about what we're teaching our leaders. A customer archetype wants quality and material that has depth. A lot of training out in the marketplace right now are good reminders. Hey, it's important to recognize your employees. Heard it many times. Many athletic coaches say it over and over again. The books say it. But how do you do it? So our customer archetype is saying, hey, you know, most training out there is good. I buy it as a good reminder for my leader, but is it inspiring them to change? We want materials of depth. And sometimes it's good to have someone outside a company say it, because kind of confirm what they've been saying inside the organization. I've been that. I could say it blue to my face when I was a director of leadership development. As long as I bring someone else from outside to say the same thing, all my leaders were like, I'm like, I said that for the last 5 years. So when asked what type of leaders they desire to have, or what skills they would like their leaders to possess, a customer archetype shares skills and personality that best support the style of servant leadership, such as humility and honesty, genuine caring for employees, and yet disciplined and accountable, because God said, I discipline those I love, right? Servant leadership has emerged over the last 20 to 30 years on a grand scale in some of the most admired and successful companies such as Zappos and Southwest Airlines. Why do you think it worked? Because Jesus came to serve. It works. When we can create a sustainable system that teaches and communicates the expectation of being an excellent leader, we create a common language and expectation throughout our culture. So that is what a systematic system can do for you. You're not just saying it to one leader, one group of leader, one division. You're communicating that expectation throughout the organization. I'll tell you this, HR professional who have to deal with those leadership issues is gonna thank you and love you for it. So the third challenge is this. is accessibility and consistency. What method do we take to make sure our training and development effort is accessible to leaders, not only in our headquarters, but in different states, in different countries, because it's a growing economy. And how much will that cost us? After we deliver a great training and development initiative, how do we ensure the same learning and development experience is repeated for the next 2 or 3 leaders who will join the company, or who will be promoted into leadership 2 or 3 months from now? Will they receive the same training and development? So all the initiatives you are doing, can you easily repeat it? Will it be consistent? Because when consistency is not there, we kind of lose momentum. We lose that fire that we set off. I've seen it. I've done programs like that. The 4th challenge is accountability or metrics and measurement. While some organizations share that they're implementing leadership training and development initiatives, they feel that their leaders are growing and are getting better, but none of the organizations say that they have a disciplined measurement system to measure how effective each of their initiatives are. Is there a leadership assessment out there for me to gauge where this person's at before training and development and post training and development? None, not existing. So I want to hammer the point of what leadership excellence is, because we gotta first start right there. What is a great leader look like? So I chose this video because it was talking about the concept that he had been working on is leaders eat last. That's what really leadership is about. I left you a card in each of your seat is a quote from Jack Welch, a man who needs no introduction. He said, "Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others." It starts with a transformation of heart. Can you put yourself down and put others first? But it must be followed with learning the skill of how to do so. Just because your heart is in the right place doesn't mean you can act like it in an organization as a leader. There's complexity to servant leadership. Yes, it starts with a choice, it starts with a heart, but it must be followed through with application. So that's what we embark on the journey to solve, is how do we help company integrate training and development initiatives to teach the skill of servant leadership, not in an event-driven manner, but in a sustainable, continuous manner. Because I'll tell you, a recent white paper released by Nick Petrie with Center for Creative Leadership, he summed it up. He was talking about the challenges and trends of developing future leadership, and there's a trend that stood out to me. He said the decline of the heroic leader, the rise of collective leadership. We're approaching an end of an era dominated by individual leaders and the beginning of another, which embraces network of leaders. This describes precisely why it is important to build up more and better leaders. The buck just doesn't stop with one person anymore, nor is it sufficient for a growing company. So will we rise to the challenge of creating a sustainable system that will develop our leaders for the future, because our leaders need it from us and deserve it from us. Thank you very much.
Jeffrey mentioned sharing my dossier. Dossier doesn't really have a good connotation these days, but I can assure you that I have not colluded with the Russians. So, just to get that straight out right out the gate. Have no idea who Fusion GPS is. A little bit about my background, because I don't want to bore you with it, but I'm a pharmacist and a clinical pharmacist. I was trained to work with people to help them develop a strategy for their health care and to achieve optimum results from their pharmacotherapy. I eventually wound up in a research liaison position at the Upjohn Company, worked through a variety of opportunities there, but my real interest gravitated towards strategic development and development of strategy for the company, and worked in the Corporate Quality Center, in which we advise the CEO as to how best to look out for the big picture and make sure that they're always in a position to make good decisions about the company going forward. That didn't last very long because we got bought out and eventually ended up with the Pfizer folks, and I decided to leave then and retire. But you get the itch, you come back and find a new way to express yourself. And I wanted to continue in the strategy vein, and that's what I'm doing now. And I hope that you'll see as we go through a brief presentation that thinking strategically is really very important, because it's easy to get off track, and once you do, it's hard to get back on track. But I won't take too much of your time about me, because I want to really focus on you. And my role here is to help you work through some issues in a workshop format, because as Michelle mentioned, adults do learn differently. They learn by doing. So I'm going to try to involve you as much as I can in learning a few things that would be helpful to you back at your workplace. I want to introduce to you a few very simple, very easy to use, yet very powerful tools that can help you think more strategically and make better decisions about your business. So a lot of our time today will be spent in actually you doing the work, which makes it easier for me, which is really, I like that. So let's get busy with it. And as Paul introduced today, he mentioned the concept of story. And it's really important, I think, to understand what he means by life story. And for me, it's basically the summation of all the decisions you've made since the time you were born up till today and on through into the future. Your decisions will determine your results, your outcomes. So we want to put you in the best possible position to make good decisions at every juncture, and that's by thinking strategically. So I'll ask you to work with me, and we're going to have to shorten this a little bit because I can't give you the full depth of each tool, but I want to make it at least meaningful to you so you can walk away here feeling that your time was well spent and that you can actually do something about it going forward. So with that, and Rob's going to be talking a little bit more later about the true power of story and how it can really make a difference in your life. And when you look back at your story, you can be proud of it. So let's get busy with a little bit of my story, which is actually a fish story. And it involves my son Billy here. At a very early age, actually in preschool, he was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. It's sometimes known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He was the epitome of the hyperactivity part. He would be going 90 miles an hour in his bedroom. And then I unleashed him out into the world, and he ramped up from there. But when he was young, he found a tool. He found a way to cope with his hyperactivity, and that tool was fishing. It was interesting. His playmates all would watch cartoons on Saturday morning. He always gravitated toward the fishing shows, hunting shows. And it's true to this day. He graduated from Michigan State University in 2003. And he had a degree in forestry. Eventually went back to school and got a degree in forest hydrology. He's now graduating from Iowa State University with a PhD in environmental science and water ecology. So he is a man of water. Hasn't yet walked on water, but he's a man of water. He knows water. Now, his request for a graduation present in 2003, he said, "Dad, I want to go on a fishing trip with you." I kind of expected that. So I had it planned already. So we went down to Lake Okeechobee in Florida, premier bass fishing lake in the country. And what you see here actually is the first catch on the first day. Now, to give you a little bit of understanding as to how he approaches fishing, this was on the first cast of the day. Now you can see by the shadows, it's pretty early in the morning. It's about 7:30 in the morning down there. And with that angle, you can just imagine the sun hitting you right in the eyes. And the shimmering lake, that sun, it's like a strobe light. It was really hard to see. Now, he used a couple tools, most obvious of which would be the rod and reel. The lure has to be pretty flashy in order to attract the fish, has to make some sounds. He was well equipped. He's got more fishing rods than I have pencils at home. But he was well equipped. But he had one tool that really was more important than the rod or the reel or the lure. And you'll notice that he's wearing these sunglasses. Now they're polarized lens, and the reason for the sunglasses is so that he could see through the glare, so that he could see exactly where he needed to cast in order to get those fish. I guarantee you, he can see below the water. He knew exactly on that first cast the structure that he was looking at and the wind and where it was blowing and the sun, the angle and all that. He knew exactly where he wanted to cast because he could see through the glare. So I want to provide a tool for you as you go forward in your workday, a couple of tools to help you see through the glare of all that distraction that's going on, in your life. And again, I want to make sure that it's clear. So we're going to spend a bit more time actually doing. So you'll notice there's a packet of worksheets. You should be able to gather those. So if you don't have one, grab one, and we'll get ready and begin to use those. Now, as a side note, how many of you have been to Las Vegas? Okay. What did you notice there? Did you see some bright lights? Sounds in the casino is pretty loud, a lot of ding, 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 ding. Okay. How does that hyperactive environment with people on the streets, people walking through the casinos, how does that affect decision making? It has a pretty negative effect on decision making because there's so much commotion going on around you. You know what they say about Vegas? What goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know what really stays in Vegas?
Your money.
Your money, yeah. And that's by design. They've got you so wound up and so distracted, you don't even notice the one-armed bandits pickpocketing you. And they are. And you don't realize it until you're on the plane heading home. So, as Paul mentioned, real leaders try to avoid distraction. Because distraction really does kill your ability to make good decisions. Now, sometimes life is like a storm. Things are swirling around you, the lightning bolts are striking, the rain's coming down. It's really hard to see your way forward in the midst of a storm. Now, I'll use an analogy of pilots as they begin to move you from point A to point B. They always file a flight plan, which is basically their strategic plan to get you from point A to point B safely, quickly, comfortably. They're thinking strategically. They're thinking about how to be in the best position throughout the flight to make sure they make good decisions so that you arrive at point B in the state you want. It's very important because you can't wait until you're in the middle of the storm to decide where you want to go. So this distraction, sometimes it's termed ADD, attention deficit disorder, because there's so much going on around you. Well, the best antidote to ADD is a little more ADD, but it's a different type of ADD. I like to call it applying disciplined decisions. Thinking through before you act to make sure that your action is in accordance with your values, but also your interests and your goals. So what I'd like to introduce to you is the whole concept of applying disciplined decisions. Now, what does that really mean? Well, the easy definition is decisions that you make that lead to the results that you want. But you are what you decide to be, as Paul intimated in his opening remarks. How you make those decisions determines how you're going to end up. Now, from the standpoint of the business world, you hear a lot about data-driven businesses these days. You got to ask yourself, is data really sufficient to base a good decision upon? Well, data are individual points. And just like my son watching the fishing shows, he got a little bit of data about technique and the style of fishing and how to go about that. But over time, he accumulated more and more information. So information is a good deal more useful to guide decision making. But you have to ask yourself, is information really enough to be consistently making good decisions? Information organized leads to knowledge. My son Billy became much more knowledgeable as a fisherman. as he accumulated more and more information and consolidated that into a package of knowledge that he could use to guide his decisions. I guarantee that first cast blew me away. Within 2 seconds, he's reeling in this big bass. It's a 9.5-pound bass. And that wasn't the biggest one we caught that week. But knowledge is not yet the point where you're comfortable that you're always going to be making good decisions. So I would suggest that knowledge, organized over time, you will develop the wisdom. And the wisdom is the guide that you need. But wisdom is only part of the answer. Because wisdom, as Michelle mentioned, is potential. Unless you apply that wisdom consistently, you won't get the results consistently. So I'm going to ask you to think about wisdom and making wise decisions at every step of the way in alignment with your goals, which will lead to success, both in life as well as in business. But then ask yourself, okay, how do I do this? Well, again, you are what you decide to be. If your vision, and how many of you really came today with a very crystal clear vision in your mind of what your success is going to look like? Just raise your hand if you know exactly in life what you want to achieve. It's okay if you didn't raise your hand because we're going to try to help you get there. But success, whatever it is that you have in mind, hold that in a crystal clear image right there. Because what we're going to use is that image, that vision, as the standard by which you'll judge your decisions. If they're not leading you toward that vision, you're off track. Paul mentioned getting off track. It's very easy to do unless you're always thinking and planning. And I guarantee you that if you do it and you spend some time thinking, your decisions will improve and your results will improve subsequently. Now, to be able to be successful, you need to value wise decision making, because you have to have enough value that you'll spend the time doing it. And if you spend that time, wise decisions are built upon deep knowledge. And the depth of your knowledge comes from your validation of the information. My son would always compare the fishing shows. You know, one guy did a little bit, Van Damme would do it differently from some of the other folks. But he always compared, and he built up a very deep understanding of fishing. But that information has to be actively sought out. You have to collect it and organize it. And if you're not actively doing it in the real world every day, you're going to miss something that could be added to your information, your knowledge, and then your wisdom. Again, wise decisions lead to better results. Now, what could go wrong? Well, there are a few glaring mistakes that leaders make. And remember I mentioned about the sunglasses, where you can see through the glare? The glaring, you would think, leaders, how did they get there and still make these same mistakes? Paul mentioned, as Jeffrey mentioned, we're human. We have a part that's divine, but we're not completely divine. We're still human. Now, the first glaring mistake of leadership, I will put it in terms of an external decision. It's an unwise decision in the external environment in which you work. Overreacting. Now, whether you jumped too soon like that big bass at the first splash and flash, you had limited data. I ask you, does that look like a fish? No. He saw the flash and he reacted, and it cost him. Now, we put him back in the lake, but he was pretty good looking. We might have eaten him, I don't know. But all the glitters isn't gold. The other manifestation of overreacting is you see the entire strobe effect and you try to do too much. You're trying to grasp at each flash and you overwhelm your capability to perform. And I've seen that in leaders. They try to do everything and they do nothing really very well. So the overreaction is a very common mistake among leaders. They're active people. They want to be involved. But sometimes you can be too involved. The opposite of that is to under-respond. And this is where, for example, you have those analytical leaders that just have to have 100% certainty, so they're waiting for that last bit of data, and it never arrives. they wait too long, the opportunity passes them by. Or maybe they're just not observing and they don't see the indicators that tell them time to act. So they let the opportunity pass by. These two extremes are fairly common, but there's a sweet spot in between. And the tools that I want to expose you to today are going to give you that edge to get into that sweet zone, that sweet spot, and make better decisions so that you don't overreact, but you also don't under-respond. But there's a third real problem in leadership today. That's an unwise internal decision. This is when the values on the wall in your office or on that plaque, flowery words, they're meant to provide a great image of your company. But those values don't match the values in your heart. And the values in your heart are what drives behavior. And Stephen Covey once in one of his programs mentioned that you can't talk your way out of a situation that you behave yourself into. And if your values aren't consistent, you're going to need help. Now, the tools I'm going to offer you can help in this as well. But there's one more tool that I'd recommend to you. It's a book of wisdom. And it's a book that you'll find easily accessible. There's a lot in here to help make sure that you don't make this internal unwise decision. Consult it often. I guarantee it'll help you out. Well, let's keep it going. Here's where you get to work. I like that part. What I'd like you to do is take out this worksheet. It's entitled the Strategic Factors Worksheet. The model that I base it on is, and these are all publicly available. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to do anything but take advantage of it. This is a force field that's looking at all the forces that are weighing in, both positive and negative, on your performance. And Paul really focused on the performance issue and raising the bar. So what I want you to think about, and Jeffrey also mentioned, in the cards that he suggested you fill out, things that keep you up at night. Those can be the negatives, but they can also be some positives. Maybe you're not taking advantage of some of the positives you have. So this strategic worksheet is going to be yours to fill out. And it's a condensed version. This is actually a much more robust tool. But you'll notice that on the left here, the red circle, that's where you are today. That's current state. The green triangle, that's where you want to be. That's your vision. And I hope you got that clear vision in mind of where you want to go. In between here is called the transitional dynamic. You know another term for that? A life. Stuff happens. You're trying to go in this direction, but there's some things that are helping you. It's kind of like pilots, when they look at their flight plan, they try to find the tailwinds to help push them. There's also some headwinds, some icebergs, things that are going to get in your way. If you're not looking at those and thinking deeply about all these forces, it's going to be very hard for you to manage them. Now, I'm often reminded of the serenity prayer. God, give me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, just because you might not be able to change them doesn't mean you can't manage around them. You're going to have to deal with them at some point in time. You might as well make good decisions. Put yourself in a strategic position to make good decisions at every juncture. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take a couple minutes. Everybody should have a pen or a pencil or something. And on the 3 lines, and this is an abbreviated form, but I just want to give you the sense for how the tool works. I want you to write the 3 things that are tailwinds for you, that are helping move you toward your vision. Just capture 3 things. And then on the other side, 3 things that are standing in your way, the icebergs that you want to avoid. So take a moment and think about those before you write, but write them down, because there's, as Paul kind of alluded to, there's actually a neurochemical change that your body undergoes when you write something. You actually create physical changes in your network in your brain that actually are hardwired. And by writing it down, you're going to ensure that something will happen differently that will benefit you. So take the time to think, then write. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. But think really deeply. What are the major forces that are helping you or hurting you in your pursuit of your vision, both personal and in business? Ready to go? Okay. Well, the second worksheet, we're going to build on what you just wrote down. And the second worksheet is called the prioritization matrix. Paul and Michelle both mentioned how important it is to focus on the important. Michelle even went beyond that to say life or death. Well, hopefully you're not in that situation, or at least the life part is better than the death part. But I want you to think about now how you're going to make sure that you're focusing on the right things. So I would ask you to take those 6 things that you just wrote down, and on this prioritization matrix, write those 6 things down the left-hand column. It doesn't matter what order you put them in. Some people like to put all the helpers in one block and the hindrances in another, but it doesn't matter. What we're going to do is a pairwise comparison to help you decide which are truly the most important factors that you need to attend to as a leader. Now you'll see that there's another row on the top here that take the same order and just write it in across the top row. That way we're going to compare each to each other and establish a relative value so that you know it'll come out to you and it'll be very clear where you need to focus your efforts. So take a moment, just list those down this side and then across the top here. There's also in the gray box a legend, a set of numbers that it's arbitrary, believe me. The magic is not in the 5. But it's designed to help you separate and make sure that you're able to relatively value each of these factors so that you're going to be focused on the most important one. Now in this example, I took item A to be much greater in impact in my success compared to item B. So you'll see that in row A, I've placed 5, much greater, under B. Correspondingly, B is only about 1/5 as impactful as item A, so across B, I've placed 1/5. Everybody with me? Make sense? Okay. You're establishing the relative weight of these factors in your success. Now, if you continue on, you can complete the row. I've made the analysis for each of these pairs, A to C, A to D, on through F. And in each case, I've placed a number in there. This is the relative value, A compared to all the others. You'll see the inverse down the side. If something is 5 times as great, the opposite factor is 1/5. So you can see that more is a value of 2, equal is 1, half is less, 1/5 is much less. So what you're doing is comparing each of these factors in your life, and as you complete the entire worksheet, you're going to end up with a very clear picture by virtue of the weight that you tally across the row as to which of these has the biggest impact on your life and in your success. This again is stopping for a moment, making a wise decision to really understand the environment you live in, both the external environment as well as the internal environment, and make good decisions around how you invest in your success. A lot of people just have a vague idea that, oh yeah, I should focus here, I should focus there. They don't see through the glare. These are sunglasses for you to see through the glare. Life is so busy, so distracted. You need to take time to stop and evaluate. Am I on the right track? Am I going where I want to go? So give you another minute or two to kind of complete this evaluation. And again, this is just to illustrate the tool. The tool actually can be much larger and much more robust. We just don't have the time today. But I want you to feel as though you understand the tool and can use it in a quieter time when you have the opportunity to be quiet with yourself and make a wise investment in your future. Is everybody with me? I don't see anybody sleeping yet, but a couple nodding heads, so all right. Very good. All right, well, the last stage of this then is, what are you going to do about it? The last tool is to take your highest priority, whatever that might be, whatever the calculations were that tells you this is a much greater factor in my life and I need to devote attention to it. You all familiar with the Pareto principle, the 80-20? Okay, it's true. If you aren't taking that 20% of your focus on the important things, you're going to miss out on the 80% of the results that you're looking for. So take the time, invest in yourself, and then what I want you to do is fill out a plan, because I'd like to have you leave here today with a real plan, at least the beginnings of one. And what I'd like to focus on is just one of the factors, and the one that's most important based on the calculation. And I want you to fill out what I call a results plan. A lot of people use action plans, but actions are just activities. I want results. And I want you to get the results you're looking for. So we start with the end in mind. We're going to keep that end in mind throughout the process. Because if you don't have a crystal clear vision of where it is you're trying to achieve, you're not going to get there. So the first section is to take a look at what needs to change. Remember that transitional dynamic, here you are today. What needs to change to take you to that future that you're looking for? So fill in that component, because then you're going to have to ask yourself, why is change needed? If you can't answer that question for yourself, how in the world are you going to be prepared to answer the question when your followers come to you and ask you, why do we need to change? We're doing pretty well. So you need to be able to answer that first for yourself, to be in a better position strategically to help them make better decisions about how they engage and work with you. Following that, you're going to have to quantify it, because if you don't have a crystal clear understanding of how much, how will you know when you get there? So how much is needed to change in order for you to be successful? After that, it's how will this change be measured? How are you going to know if you're making progress and whether or not you actually reach your goal? So that measurement is critical, whether it be a 30% reduction in cost or 40% improvement in revenues, or maybe replacing key leaders you've lost, or whatever it might be. You have to be able to know exactly how are you going to measure that. Are they in place? Which then is followed by the by when. You got to have a target date to get this done, otherwise it just never happens. Following that, who is going to be tasked? Now, if you're able to accomplish it all on your own, that's fine, but you got to put yourself down there. But then anybody else that you're going to need, if you're a leader, you probably have some followers. They need to know that they're a part of your team, and they're going to be tasked with specifics as to how to get there. And then finally, what are you going to do today to get rolling? Now you notice on the end of the worksheet, it says, what are you waiting for? A lot of people have good intentions. They come out of a training session and say, hey, I'm going to go do this. And what happens? Goes on the shelf. They revisit it the next year. Oh, I should have done that. Remember that response, the under-response? Try to avoid that. Do something today. So take a moment to fill that in, but then I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, and that's to hold yourself accountable. I'd like you to pull out one of your business cards. If you don't have a business card, tear off a napkin, or no, these are cloth napkins. Tear off a piece of paper, put your contact information, and find somebody. Michelle mentioned about network leadership. Expand your network. Find somebody that you'll hold accountable and ask them to hold you accountable tomorrow. They're going to call you and ask you, how did you do? Did you get done today what you said you were going to do? And why is that important? Do I have to tell you? If you don't take action, you've under-responded. That's a glaring mistake. And how many glaring mistakes can you afford if you want to be successful? So take a moment, and if any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them, but we want to stay on time here today and get you out on time. But I really want you to leave feeling you spent your time well, and that you had the opportunity to take something tangible home and actually do something with it. So spend a few seconds more, filling that out, and pull out that business card. Make sure you find somebody that you're going to hold accountable and expect to hold you accountable.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Guys, gals, we have an enormous problem in the marketplace today. And essentially, the problem is this. Many companies are wasting a ton of money on ineffective marketing and messaging. We've all been down this trail before. We've perhaps even walked it ourselves. Has anybody in here ever been part of rebuilding or redesigning or kind of having some say in reestablishing your web presence or website? Okay, a few hands going up. Is that an easy project to navigate? Not at all. As we enter into a website kind of strategy session, we're trying to say, well, what does our company really represent? What do we want the public to know about what we do? And you can really run yourself silly wordsmithing this thing, can you not? And you know the drill. Maybe you design a beautiful site that looks like this on the back end of it. Your journey starts here. Artisan, innovative solutions. We all feel good about those words, don't we? Absolutely. So would you agree with me? This is a beautifully built website. Pretty nice, beautiful imagery, it's inviting. What does this company do? Innovative solutions is what they provide. The highest priced real estate on your website is the top right-hand corner. It's where the human eye goes first. Let's see what this company put. Oh, a question. Why start? Why start indeed? So, many of us can potentially be guilty of kind of positioning our company, trying to be all-encompassing with every word that we use. And quite frankly, if people don't know how to engage your ministry, your business, your call to action, it's probably a little bit of a waste. And the reason is people buy products and services based on the words that they read that invite them to buy it. Have you ever bought anything on a website before? Amazon.com, anybody heard of it? What's the last thing that what's your name?
Greg.
Greg, what's the last thing you bought on Amazon.com?
A filter for my refrigerator.
A filter for his refrigerator. Amazon's got everything, does it not? So probably like Greg, you go to Amazon.com looking for your filter. You find a product that matches the product code, probably that the manufacturer supplies to you, look for the best price, and then you roll down to the bottom. What's at the bottom? The reviews. How many stars does this filter have? Is this going to be a quality product? Have you thought about how important the words that you carefully select are when positioning your business? They matter. They really do matter. And the reason that they matter is because the human brain really exists for two functions. The first is to help you survive and thrive, and the second is to help you conserve calories. First, survive and thrive. Everybody in here, close your eyes. Close your eyes. This is a game we're going to play. Raise your right hand if you're able. Keep your eyes closed. And now, just the pointer finger, point to the ceiling. Without looking, with all eyes closed, I'd like you to point to the nearest exit door right now. Open your eyes. How accurate are we? That is a door. There probably is an exit sign there. Some of you are pointed toward the back. Now, did you enter into this room? Thank you. You can put your hands down. Did you enter into this room thinking, I must memorize where this exit door is? Not a chance. I mean, maybe you cognitively thought about that consciously, but probably your subconscious went to work harvesting, collecting, and saving that information just in case that fire alarm goes off and you need it. Same game, close your eyes. Let's close your eyes. Hand up in the air, you know the drill, point to the ceiling. If you joined us for breakfast, point to where the buffet table was. Right in the back. And open your eyes. Everybody accurate? I don't think the buffet table is still there, but it was back there. In case you got hungry, you wanted to thrive, one of the basic human needs, you knew where to go with it. Your brain is inundated with 3,000 commercial messages a day. You are constantly sorting information in that survive, thrive mechanism, primarily for information that's usable that can help you achieve one of those two goals. Now, the second reason that words matter is because your brain is wired to conserve calories. Conserve calories. If I were to tell you that, let's see, your brain is a calorie-burning machine inside of your body, have you ever thought of it that way? Kevin, you've done some dissertation work. You have your doctorate, do you not? As you were going through your doctoral program years ago, was there a lot of papers you were writing? There probably were. Kevin, did you spend a lot of time writing those papers for your doctoral program? Absolutely. And how did you feel at the end of a day of writing papers? Exhausted, says Kevin. Have we talked prior about this? I'm just kind of putting Kevin on the spot here. Now, Kevin, riddle us all this. You were sitting in front of maybe a computer, at the time, writing a paper, literally just sitting in a chair, using your fingers, that's it. How could you leave the day exhausted? It's not like you were at the gym all day. It's because Kevin was sorting information, burning calories like a blowtorch, trying to come up with some concise way to communicate the thoughts that he was having. It took a lot of calories for Kevin to create those papers. And if you've done any thought-intensive work, you could probably relate to that, can't you? Absolutely. Now, survive, thrive, conserve calories. I am not here to claim a political affiliation, but we have, in the last year and a half, concluded a presidential campaign. And I'd like you to just simply raise your hand if you can recall what Donald Trump's campaign slogan was. Something about America. Let's say it together. Make America great again. Excellent. You remembered. Question, raise your hand. Can you remember Hillary Clinton's? Look around. There's a couple. In unison, let's give it a try. Exactly. Exactly. Am I here to tell you, now listen, I'm not here to tell you that one is better than the other. Let's rewind the tape 5.5 years. Raise your hand if you can remember Barack Obama's campaign speech. Something about we can believe in something. There we go. Change. Okay, some heads are nodding, not as many as the Donald Trump. It's been 5.5 years. John McCain, anybody? You can. The reason is our human brain latches on, stores, harvests information for use. If we can connect with it, that it's going to help us survive or thrive, and if it's said so simply that it conserves the fewest amount of calories. Powerful. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Make America Great Again is the all-encompassing plan to make America great again, but I am here to tell you that it is a portable message that people remember as a result of hitting these two hot buttons. So my question again to you is, have you thought about the words you are using to sell your company? When we engage clients in messaging, they are on a treadmill running. Their brain is constantly burning through these calories. Anybody ever work out at a gym before or walked into like a YMCA, right? If I knew Dick was on the treadmill and I bumped into Dick at the YMCA, David D. Hunting, and I saw he was running at level 6.0, like a 10-minute mile on this treadmill, I'd probably not waste a ton of time talking to him because he'd be exhausted, right? He's kind of out of breath and everything. My question to you is, if you knew that your customers were running on a treadmill, would you get to the point quicker? Think about that, because they are actually on a treadmill. If I were to ask you, what do you do for a living? We're at a cocktail party, or depending on your beliefs, we're at a coffee shop, and I were to ask you, what do you do for a living? What would you respond with? How would you say and represent your company? Well, when you respond, you're actually giving, when you give a piece of information about what you do, if I were to tell Nick, well, my grandfather started our company back in 1959, that's a bowling ball, a piece of information that I'm handing to Nick. Can Nick hold a bowling ball, a single 8-pound bowling ball? Yeah, he probably can. Do you bowl, Nick?
Not well.
That's another lecture. So Nick is successful in holding an 8-pound bowling ball with that first piece of information. And then I select another piece of information. And we deal in the graphics and printing industry in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's super, I'm giving him another piece of information. Can Nick hold 2 pieces of information, 2 bowling balls? Yes. If I give Nick a 3rd bowling ball, do you think Nick could do it? He's shaking his head yes. By the time that I get to the 4th bowling ball, what happens? How many does Nick drop? Nick checks out because he says, this is too complicated to understand. I can't quickly understand how this is going to help me survive or thrive. And it's taking too many calories for my brain to go to work. I would rather go see the buffet table. I got to go to the bathroom. I know where that's at. And he's thinking, how do I get out of this conversation sooner than later so that I can go get those basic human needs met? So carefully, if you knew that each piece of information that you were sharing was as if you were handing somebody an 8-pound bowling ball, would you carefully pay attention to the words that you're sharing with them? As a certified story brand guide, we have a mantra inside of the realms of story brand, and that's simply this. If you confuse, you'll lose. Think back to the bowling balls. If you confuse, you'll lose. Now, story has been around for centuries, thousands and thousands of years, maybe even before that. So what we're sharing today is not necessarily something new that you've never encountered before. In fact, if you think back to all the best well-told stories or movies that you've seen, you've probably seen each of the ingredients that I'm going to be equipping you with today. But story, in and of itself, is a sense-making device. What StoryBrand has done is taken all of the best plot lines from all of the best and well-told stories, overlaid them on top of one another, and extracted 7 common elements that any business, ministry, organization, person can use to carefully craft a version of what you do that entices and engages attention from the people that matter most. Story is a sense-making device. Many of us in this room, can we agree this has been a tremendous day together already, has it not? The human brain, whether you like it or not, daydreams 30% of the time. 30% of the time, you're thinking about something other than Rob sitting up here holding a microphone telling you about story. And what story does, though, is it grabs hold of your attention and it gives you an anchor to focus on for about 90 to 120 minutes. And if we play our cards right, we'll only be here for about 7 hours today. That's a joke. You can laugh now. Okay? But for about 90 to 120 minutes, story has the ability to stop your brain from daydreaming and to invite it into a narrative that you want to listen to. You know this, Dick Rolfe. You've been in the business for years and years and years. What's the average length of a feature film movie in the theater?
120 minutes.
120 minutes. Bing. Think about the last movie you saw in the theater. How long was it? Think about the movie that you saw go 180 minutes, super long. Were you checking your watch? Were you thinking about going home to dinner? All the same reasons that we just discussed. So story in and of itself, I'm not going to be teaching you once upon a time techniques today. I'm going to be sharing with you 7 absolute strategic tools that you can use to craft your organization's message in a way that your clients, and most importantly, the prospective clients that you want to start serving, want to listen to. So in StoryBrand, in the StoryBrand framework that we teach, there are 7 essential elements. We're just going to walk through those with you today. The first thing is we have to define who is the character. What is the character? In Star Wars, this is the Luke Skywalker. In Hunger Games, this is your Katniss Everdeen. This is the picture of somebody or something that is the character, the central role in the story. Every character has a want. We have to be able to uncover that. When you stop talking about what your customers want, they're going to stop listening to you. The only reason that they approach you is they think that you have something in your organization that can meet a need that they have, a survive or thrive. The next thing we have to identify, of course, is the problem. If I told you that, how many Die Hard movies are out there, Bruce Willis fans? 6? If I told you that Die Hard 22 was coming out, because there's so many of them, and it was all about Bruce Willis taking his daughter back to school shopping and then they got ice cream and that's the movie, would you go see it? Absolutely not. Because all good movies, as my friend up here could tell you, have to have some problem that must be resolved. Your customers, the people that are, the story that's most important, the only reason that they're visiting your website to begin with is because they have a problem they're hoping that you can solve for them. So are you talking about your customer's problem? Because if you stop talking about their problems, they're going to tune out. Back to the bowling balls. Do you care that my grandfather started a company back in 1959 or that it's located down the street? Or worse yet, if I told Nick, well, he asked me, what do I do? It's complicated. Boom. I'm instantly putting up a barrier to say, you don't have to listen to this. Start daydreaming until you can get to that bacon and eggs in the back of the room, right? So if we stop talking about the problems that our customers face, we no longer give them a reason to be attracted to what we're doing. We introduce the guide. In well-told stories like Star Wars, this is the Yoda character. If you're a Hunger Games fan, the Haymitch. The guide is really the strong role. This is the been there, done that person that's a part of the character's story. They've walked in the shoes, they have the goods, the authority, they've got the experience, the toolkit to help them past a barrier that the character is experiencing. Now here's the most common pitfall in the use of this material. Many of us in this room, myself included at one point, have a tendency to put ourselves in the hero's role, the character's role in our customer's story. You no longer, from this day forward, play the role of the hero to your customers. You play the role of the guide. It is only the customer's story that matters. You come alongside of your customer to understand that story, show them how to overcome their obstacles, and to bring them to a successful outcome. You're Yoda without the voice. Okay? You are Yoda without the voice. So your customer is the true hero, the character that we're trying to define the story around. It is not you. You are the guide. And if you think back to it, Luke Skywalker, Katniss Everdeen, you pick the character at the beginning of the story. They're pretty uncertain about themselves. They're insecure. They don't think they have what it takes. There's some awakening moment in the plot line where they realize that they actually have the goods to, come to victory. So if you place yourself in the character's role, the hero's role, you're really saying, I'm weak, I'm insecure, I'm really not sure if I belong here until, will you help me? And the customer gets confused by that. So be the Yoda. Equip the customer to success. The next step here is to give the plan. Now, back to the bowling balls again. 3 steps, that's it, that's your limit. You go beyond that, how many do they forget? All of it. So step 1, schedule a visit with our office. Step 2, consult with one of our attorneys. And step 3, leave with confidence knowing that your estate is well protected for years to come. Simple step. Now you say, hold on, Rob, estate planning attorney, okay, hang on. We got Miller Johnson, we got Varnum sitting right over there for us. There's so many more steps to an estate plan than just those 3. I get it. I'm just telling you that it doesn't matter to your customer at that point. They need to know that it's safe to do business with you and you're not going to overload them with bowling balls where they have to think so hard to figure out, how is this person going to help me? This is the initial message. This is the attracting message that brings them to that first meeting. Once they get there, you can lay out your 56 steps. But my encouragement to you is to not put too many bowling balls in their hand, or else they're going to drop them all and you're probably missing out on a customer engagement. Then we have to call them, after we've laid out those 3 simple steps, we need to call them to a clear point of action. For many of you, if we're talking now, you're going to think, oh, only Rob works with websites. That's not true, but websites are probably the common denominator among all of us here, right? Many of us have them. So the clear call to action for many of you is that top right corner of your website. And for some of you, if you're selling a product, it's the Buy Now button. If for some of you, you're selling a service, it's the Schedule a Consultation button. It's something very clear, very direct that you're asking them, take that first step. It's so easy. Here's where you do it. Call them to action. And unless we clearly place that, almost deliver that in a wrapped bow to them to say, this is all you have to do, just click here and the process begins, they're not going to go searching and finding it. Why? Because too many calories, and they just want to know how you're going to help them survive and thrive. Every step of the way. It's almost like a permission-based marketing. And of course, all good stories have to end with a successful outcome, but that success only means something if there's failure at stake. Failure is not a drum to beat in the total musical, but it has to be in there in order for the success to mean anything, right? So to not engage your company, to not engage your brand, there is a possibility of some failure point that you want to incite in the conversation, but quickly pivot over to sugar, sugar, sugar. It's like, anybody ever make cookies before? How much salt do you put in cookie dough? Just a teeny bit. That's kind of like the failure point. Just a little sprinkle so they know what's at stake. And how much sugar do you put in cookies? A couple cups, if you really want to get at it. So that's the success piece of it, right? So again, let's walk through. We have a character who's got a problem, who meets you, the person sitting in your seat, who has a plan, tells them what to do with that plan so that they can live a successful life and avoid the failure that they don't want anyway. That's your new marketing strategy. And if we're going to be honest, your marketing collateral absolutely must answer these seven questions. They absolutely must answer these 7 questions. It's someplace in the marketing piece, and someplace in the messaging. First is, what do our customers really want? What are their problems? How have we as an organization positioned ourselves as the guide to our clients? Have we given them a clear plan of how to actually take a move and step forward? Do they know where that first step is in that plan? Do they know what's at stake? And more importantly, do they know who they're going to become after they've engaged our services? The successful experience of working with your company. And if you want, by the way, I just thought I'd mention this to you. I've got some personal notes on that framework I'd be delighted to send to you that kind of help elaborate a bit further on how to organize that information, make it more usable for your company. Just email me, I'd be happy to send those to you. Now, as we do a lot of different things, but as a certified story brand guide, I have the opportunity to work alongside of companies. People think, well, this is so different from my traditional methods and approach. And probably it is. This is kind of marketing 3.0. If we've even said 2.0 is about beautiful design, this is 3.0. It's taking the design almost as a commodity. It's saying the message is what matters. People buy because of the words. Survive, thrive, conserve calories. So as a certified story brand guide, I have the opportunity to work with people through a very simple framework. It's easy to do. We can do it in an afternoon in your company of helping to recraft your message using this 7-part framework in an organization tool that we have access to. And again, I could send this to you for free as well. If you just want it, I could just send you the link to it and you can use it. It's an organizational tool that'll help you kind of collect and organize each of these 7 elements for your organization. So again, just email me and I'd be happy to send that to you as well. But most importantly, you just were equipped with 3 of the total 7 steps. Imagine what full marketing collateral built out with that engaging story that's well fine-tuned, gets right to the point and connects to your lead or prospect's desire to survive and thrive. It really is driving results. So again, we can organize it in such a way where you kind of see the old type of a website versus a new type of a website. A lot of clutter. It was in our company before. Great website. We had a lot of compliments on it. But man, fine-tuning it and getting very clear about what we do, we have seen results increase dramatically on engagement. So moving out of here, there's a couple steps, and then I'm going to have a quick closing remark. First one, hey, we've handed out 3 of these books. I can certainly give you a link or help you find access to more of them. They're on Amazon. It's a Wall Street bestseller book, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. If you'd like, we could create a brand script together. I'm happy to help walk you through that 7-step framework. It's an easy afternoon project together. Just email me, happy to help you through that. And the third step, of course, as we're loading, is answer those 7 questions, please, in your marketing. On behalf of the lead that wants to engage with your company, your business, make it easy for us to understand what you do in a quick and concise way and help us become the champions of our own story, because that's really what matters to those customers and those prospects. Well, let me close with this, guys. It's been a rapid-fire TEDx-style talk, just boom, here we go. But a lot of companies are wasting a ton of money on marketing, but it doesn't have to be that way. Remember, if you confuse, you lose, but if you have clarity, clarity is king in today's attention-starved culture. So again, I'm Rob Hughes, R3 Coaching, Certified Story Brand Guide. Here to serve you. If there's a way I can help, feel free to reach out to me. There's my email address. Thank you very much.
So let me wrap this up for you quickly with some comments about finding that talent, some of which you just saw in those module speakers, and get the same kind of talent for your own companies and get it to work. Just like everything else, if you were to manufacture an automobile or manufacture a refrigerator, it doesn't come together without an awful lot of planning, effort, and a system to make it happen. And those cars, if you've ever been to an automotive assembly plant, they pop off the line every minute. One comes off and they start it up and they drive it away. Can you imagine if they didn't put all the parts together and if it didn't come out right, the system would produce junk. And talk about a problem, most companies do not have a recruiting system, and then they complain about the performance of their people. And when they complain, I always ask them, how many people do you have in the recruiting pipeline to replace the people that you're complaining about? And the answer is invariably, we can't find good people. And it's just not true, because we have a wild, wonderful world out there, and there's a lot of good people, but they just don't have a system to find them. So let's talk about a system. A system is planned, it's documented, which means it's written as carefully as the instructions that they use to build an automobile. It's followed by everyone in the company, and there are no options other than to follow the system that we use for recruiting. And it is always used and never violated, even if the CEO's brother-in-law is the most wonderful salesman in the world. He doesn't get to come aboard the company unless he goes through the system. And frankly, I speak from a lot of both personal experience in success and in failures, and a lot of consulting experience of installing these kinds of systems in companies. When you go to the experts and say, what are the best practices that we have to follow? You get a whole list of things. But there's 3 other elements. 1, best practices. 2, efficiency in doing your recruiting so you can afford to do it. 3rd, how do you onboard to accelerate the success? At least 20% of the people that are invested in or that are hired come on board and leave within 90 days simply because they had a worthless welcome and onboarding into their company, and they figured out they didn't want to be in a clueless environment, and they left in 90 days because nobody engaged them. Onboarding people is critical. And then 4th, why don't you use the current talent in your organization to be your recruiters? So let's take a look at best practices from the experts. The first thing that I hear most often is, oh my gosh, things have so changed. We now have to deal with the millennials. Well, get over it. Because I'm a baby boomer, and there ain't many of us left. So when I came into the workplace so many years ago, they all complained about the baby boomers. So the complaints haven't changed in my 50 years in the workplace. It's just a new name. And the point is, they have different values and have been taught different things. I shock when I hear people complain about the team aspect of the baby boomers after watching them mother the baby boomers for the last 20 years and drive them to every soccer game and make sure they had peanuts and candy at the end of the game. And you do that for 20 years and say, why do they always want to work in a team environment and they don't want to be independent, self-starting entrepreneurs? Well, it's simply because that's how they have been trained and nurtured, and they need to call their team partners to get recognition that it's okay to move ahead. That's just what's been created, so deal with it. They're looking for meaningful work in comparison to the managers that are managing them. The managers don't care if the work's meaningful, just get it done. They don't care about the pay as much as you think they do. When they come in demanding pay, it's usually because they have been so unrecognized for so long that they're going to quit, and they're going to test you out and see if they can get a raise before they quit. My experience has shown is that when somebody comes in and asks for a raise, that's a 90-day red alert that they're leaving your company. Because if that's the most important thing, and it took that much courage to do it, they've got deeper problems, and they're going to be walking. Managers today think that that's the most important thing in the world. It's not. A sense of accomplishment is what they're looking for, 25% of them. Managers think only half of that. And in responsibility, they don't want responsibility. They want to be part of the team. Shared responsibility. Where those, maybe in this room, I don't see too many millennials, of older group or all the way up to the baby boomers, we wanted to be left alone. When I came out of college, I was a sales engineer. I worked out of Akron, Ohio. I had an IBM Selectric typewriter, typed my own engineering proposals, delivered them at the board of director levels at the tire companies, General Tire, BF Goodrich, Goodyear. I was walking in and out of boardrooms at 23 years old. To me, that was the minimum expectation of a job, that I should be empowered to do that, and I did it. You try doing that today with a 21, 22-year-old millennial, it isn't going to happen. They don't think the way we were taught, right? And it's not, and you're setting up for failure. In comparison, the word that was used in this particular article, we were cowboys and they're millennials. There aren't that many cowboys left in the marketplace anymore. The cowboys have been kind of kicked out of them. They're team players, and they've been nurtured on 20-some years of sports as the most important thing in the world. And they want to be part of the team, so design your company around that and still get success. The reality is when you're recruiting, you better start attracting them, developing them, and retaining them. Because the future leaders of your company are probably already in your company, working there, and they're millennial. And maybe people a little older. So if they're not good enough, think of what your future holds. They have to be good enough. And it's a responsibility of the current leadership to train and develop the new leadership. 40 or 50%, what does it say? 46% of the people in the workforce today are millennials, and it's growing all the time. Next step is you have to have efficiency in your recruiting. Recruiting by paper, recruiting by haphazardness does not work, and you will not filter out the very best. When I was running heavy recruiting engineering talent and administrative talent for my consulting business, I would yield one person out of 100 resumes. That was my system, and it was designed that way. And it started out, 100 resumes would come in, and guess who reviewed them all? I did. I went through 100 resumes in less than 10 minutes, and I picked out the 40 best. That's it. Not 41, I picked out 40. And I A'd them and B'd them. There were 10 A's and 30 B's. I passed them to my administrative staff, and they would call all the A's, and if they ran out of A's, they would call the B's, and they would ask them a scripted series of questions. As a result of that project, we ended up with 15. Because the wrong answers over the telephone would tell me enough if you have the strategically written questions. And those 15 would be brought in for a group interview. If you notice one thing, and I've got it listed there, the first step in an efficient recruiting system uses people. It doesn't use applications online. Talented people don't fill out applications online. They meet with real people. So you want to recruit real people and show them real people and get them excited at the beginning to become part of your company. Then you use the application system and you rigorously use it. You use testing, you use examination, you use referrals. Over half of the people that say they have a college degree do not have them, okay? You simply call their university and you will find out they don't have them, all right? And there's many other things that people won't tell you about themselves that can be found out with a very rigorous system. The reason the cars start when they go off the assembly line is because they have been quality checked all the way from the beginning of the paint room and the beginning of the engine line and the beginning of the platform line. And it's been checked so many times when it gets to the final start of the car, it's been checked. That's what computers are for, use machines. The third one is assessments. People say, well, assessment testing costs a lot of money. Well, a failed hire costs a lot more. All right? And every time you get bad results on the testament of that absolute superior salesman that everybody says, got to hire that person, but he fails your assessment tests, don't hire them. I already did. And they failed, just like the assessment test said they would. Assessment tests are so rigorously designed, if you use a comprehensive set of them, they will exclude you from the pain of things that the interview candidate will never tell you. They will get rid of most of the noise and allow you to focus your energy on the talent. And the final one is relationships. It's all about people. The closing and the selling, it's a two-way street with talent. You have to be impressing them as much as they're impressing you. And if you're an impressive company, if everything you've done shows the kind of quality and standards level that they would expect in their life, they'll be coming to your company regardless of the other offers. That's just the way it is. Everybody wants to be surrounded with excellence. They all want to play for the Chicago Bulls if Michael Jordan's on the team. That's just the way it is. So you have to show that you have the Michael Jordans and you're the team they want to play on, because you're hiring millennials. They are not looking for individual hero opportunity. They are looking to be part of something great. Onboarding is the next one. When you onboard, it starts long before. Everything that you have done very carefully in the recruiting process has built a file on that person that is greater than their grade school and high school and college records. You know more about them than they know about themselves the day they walk in. And you need to be prepared for them. It's shocking to me how many people hire people, and then the morning that that person's coming to work, they're running around trying to get forms and figure out, oh, do we have the safety manual? Or what are we going to tell? Oh, by the way, who's going to walk them around and who's going to show them? I walk into a company like that, I'd leave in a minute, because it's clearly they weren't expecting me, and I'm not very important to this company. If you want to recruit me and you're going to spend the time and effort and get me there, you darn well better have a training camp, and you better have it very rigorous. When I came out of college, engineering college, it was highly competitive. We had sales engineering was a brand new profession. And at that point in time, when you went in as a sales engineer, you got 6 weeks of engineering training and then 6 weeks of sales training. And then you came back 6 weeks later and you had management training. And then they would put you through course after course after course. You had a 2-year plan ahead of you. You weren't leaving that company. There was so much they were giving to you that you wanted to stay part of it. And that's what the talent, they want to be part of a winning team. A winning team is illustrated. Go find the videos by the NFL and see what Bill Belichick does as coaching, training his coaches on how to coach a football team. It's rigorous. It isn't just the players that get coached, the coaches get coached on how to be the best. And that's why they're the New England Patriots. So begin with the recruiting system. You use online HR systems. I am shocked that anybody uses anything on paper to fill in the forms, to fill in the records for the federal government, to fill in this. To not do it online in today's world is an absolute shock. You're killing your company. You must get that automated, and it must be electronic from the day they walk in the recruiting system and go all the way through the system. It will feed your accounting system, it will feed your payroll systems, it will feed everything else you need. Using any paper in recruiting process is absolutely a crime. Be ready before they are. Personalize, engage them, reward them, and challenge. You need one-on-one relationships when a new talent comes in the door or they're leaving your company. If they don't feel part of that team and an accepted part of that team in very short order, all their friends or family are saying to them, how's that job doing? How do you like it? Do you the people? What do you do down there? What's the environment like? And if they can't come up with good answers to those questions, they're gone. And now you've spent all the money to find them and you've lost them. Use your current talent in your company. Take the absolute best people you have that are the most fun, that are the best salespeople, that love your company so much, and share them with the recruits. Have them be part of the recruiting process. Bring your best foot forward because people want to be like people they see. They go in and see people who are stars in your company. They, in their head, say, I too am going to be a star just like her. I'm going to be just like him. Someday I'm going to be a manager like that manager I just met. That's the kind of company, that's the kind of person, and they will make me like that. That's what they see. So use your top talent to be the recruiting. Isn't it interesting, the number one responsibility of a CEO ultimately comes down to recruiting the best talent they can find at every layer in their organization and going out on sales calls to close the biggest deals. That's what a CEO's job ultimately is. Everything else can be delegated, but nobody can sell the company to new talent or to new customers like a CEO can. And if they can't, then you need a new CEO. Results that you're going to get on your bottom line in your company is tied directly to the results you get in your recruiting. So if your recruiting system is broken, if your recruiting system is not as rigorous as I just laid out, you simply have to get in there and fix that right now. That is a small potato to fix that compared to the impact on your bottom line long term. The impact is dramatic when you bring failed talent in. They will cost your company a fortune. And it's just simply has to be fixed at the front end. So let's wrap up. Your summit call to action, we've had some terrific modules here. Job one is to develop your new leaders. Conquer the hyperactivity that you see all around you and get focused. Avoid the distraction. Get your priorities set. Strategically think. Third, build and tell your own story. If you don't have clarity on your own story, not only do you fail in marketing, but you fail in communicating to your employees. You fail in communicating to your family. You must be able to tell your own story and have clarity. Finally, recruit the best people. The best people are out there. They're working for somebody else. So if you're struggling, it's simply because you're not recruiting the best people. And it's your own responsibility to go out and do it. And every time I hear a CEO tell me there's no talent out there, I go out and look and I say, boy, there's certainly a lot of companies running with no talent. And then you go out and find them. So they're out there to be found. It's your mission to accept and go after it. I'd like to wrap up with two final comments. And this one to tap your heart and your hand. There's one habit that you could do to improve everything in your life, and I try to do to improve my life in every dimension every day, is take 1 hour a day and nurture your own divine spirit. Whether you go to Mass every day, whether you pray it at your desk every day, whether you go quietly and get away and do something only for you to get your foundation and get your core strengthened. People go to yoga to get their core strengthened. You need to go into a closed room by yourself with a notepad and get your core strengthened. And if you do that one thing, you're only taking 5% of a 24-hour day, less than 4% of a 24-hour day, and you're applying it, but you're going to multiply your day by 5 times that to 10 times that. because things are going to happen in the top priorities that won't otherwise happen unless you take that hour for yourself. So 1 hour a day for you to nurture your spirit. I'm going to wrap up. You've heard a lot recently in the last few weeks about the famous Billy Graham. And Billy Graham is a favorite of mine. I remember as a kid in the 50s watching Billy Graham on TV. And I was inspired, as all people have been inspired. And here's a man that has stayed on his mission his entire life. And he's done the CBRT mission as well as anybody could have ever done it. And he concluded every one of his messages and campaigns with, remember, God loves you. And Jesus Christ is your personal Savior. Embrace Him. Today may be the last chance that you ever get to take advantage of the ideas we shared here this morning. And Billy Graham, if he was here, would say the same thing. And he said this other, and you may have heard him say it, and they've repeated it a number of times the last couple of weeks, is when in fact someday you hear that Billy Graham is dead, it won't be true. Billy Graham is alive and well. He's just changed his address. And we need to all think of that for ourselves. Someday we're going to have a change of address. And when we have that change of address, all this improvement we're talking about and how to make ourselves better leaders and how to make other people better leaders won't matter as much as how well we've led ourselves. Because remember, with God's grace and your own personal humility, you will reach the highest bar of your achievement, and that's eternity. And you want that eternity to be spent properly. Have a great day. Thank you for coming to this conference.
Thank you for watching this presentation. Perhaps you've never made a Christian commitment. We want to give you that opportunity today. Just a few easy steps. First of all, recognize your need. The Bible tells us that in Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All of us are sinners and must recognize our need for a Savior. By confessing our sins and turning from them, we will find forgiveness. The Bible promises in 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Believe in Jesus. God wrought a miracle when He sent His only Son to die that we might have life. Put your faith in Him and believe in His power to save you. The Bible says in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life. God has given us a great gift in His Son, but we must receive this gift. Thank Him for loving and forgiving you, and ask Him to live in your heart. His promise to us is clear. In John 1:12, the Bible says, but as many as received Him, to them He gave the right to become children of God. So Jesus is the atonement, the sacrificial lamb, the remission of sins, just as if we'd never sinned, and the forgiveness. Through Jesus, we have daily forgiveness. And having received His salvation, confess your faith. The Bible assures us in Romans 10:9, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. You know, we're all going to die and spend eternity somewhere, either in heaven or in hell. We want to give you the opportunity to pray with us today. Let's bow our head. Lord, I recognize my need for you as my Savior. I confess my sins to you now, and I turn from them, and I ask for your forgiveness, Lord. I believe in you, Lord Jesus, that you died for me, that I might have eternal life with you in heaven. Lord Jesus, I receive you now in my heart, and I thank you for forgiving me. I thank you that you love me. I thank you that you receive me into your kingdom. I believe in my heart that you are my Lord and that God raised you from the dead, that I might be saved and spend eternity with you. I thank you, Lord, that I am now part of God's family, and I commit my life to you from this day forward. Amen. And if you've prayed that prayer with us, we encourage you to share that with someone today. Thank you.